So it looks like it's going to work on my end, Roddy. Stand by.
So Dave, do you want to do the check-in? Or you want me to?
I've got it.
All right. And it's the format's down in the bottom of the chat. I think
we are
you'll
live,
use the
guys.
standard, right?
We are live.
All right, are we ready to go then? All right. So the questions: who are you? Position in district. How are you? Time constraints. Who's missing? Issues, elephants, expectation. And then the question of the day is, do you do Christmas dinner? And if so, what do you serve? And we're starting tonight with Dorman.
But Sandy's not done writing yet. Oh, there we are. Okay, cool.
What was the question again? If dinner or something?
If you do you do Christmas dinner? And if you do, what do you serve?
I am Dorman Land. I'm a teacher. I am well. I have no time constraints. Let's see, who's missing? Well, Shelly's missing. And then the rest of you will have to help me figure our styles after that. And then we have a secret roll that we make for our family recipe handed down from, well, since the Great Depression and World War II that we have. And it literally is a secret. It's only passed down among the main makers of the meal for the household. It all has to do with World War II and what things were available and what you could, because everything was rationed and everyone was working towards the war effort together. And so it was very hard for Christmas dinner. So we always have that one special roll to remind us of where we've come from and the hardships that the generations had before us. So that's pretty cool, I think.
Nice. Kristen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Powers, principal at Riverdale Elementary. I am doing really well. Spent a lot of time with teachers this week in their classrooms and getting to see kids and how excited they are for the break coming up. And I don't have any time constraints. I don't have any elephants in the room. And my expectation would be that we continue our positive work together. And do I do Christmas dinner? Well, I just remarried about 1.5 years ago, and we have a blended family. And all of our children spend Christmas night with their other parent. So we do a huge Christmas Eve at our home. And we have started a new tradition of, this might sound funny, a prime rib and 5 cheese lasagna. So it makes the meat eaters happy and the vegetarians in our house very happy. And lots of desserts and Christmas cookies and all of that great stuff.
Great. I'm coming to your house. Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Walther. I'm doing well. I am a retired teacher and counselor in the district. I have no time constraints. We know Shelley is missing. Expectations are simply just to continue the work that we've done in the past and getting better and better at it. I will have a small holiday dinner this year. For us, the baked ham with pineapple sauce and scalloped potatoes and vegetables and so on and so on.
Sandy.
Hi, Sandy Sorensen, science teacher at North Glen High School. I'm doing good. I'm actually a little bit grateful that we were a little late getting started because, as my friend Deb Blake reminded me at 4:20, while I was madly just engrossed in grading, it was time for the meeting. So I'm glad to be here. I don't have any time constraints. Of course, Shelley is missing. Expectations, well, I've been looking forward to this meeting, so I look forward to our problem solving as usual and constructive things to be done and checking some things off. And I don't have any elephants. Holiday dinner. Well, this will be the first time in probably the entire time I lived in Colorado, 22 years, that I have not been able to spend either Thanksgiving or Christmas with my family out of state because of, hashtag stupid COVID. So I make like a very mini version of our family dinner, which includes corn casserole, mashed potatoes, gravy, pumpkin pie, and yeah, so it's fun. It's still a good time.
Matt.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Schmidt. I'm the principal at Pathways. I'm doing fine today. Let's see, no issues or elephants. My expectations are to plow through the work like always. Nothing new there. We know who's missing. I can't remember. I think I'm done with all the standard stuff. We typically normally host Christmas Eve dinner. I don't cook it. I am the house cleaner and the get things organized part of the crew. My wife is the cook in the family. She's way, way better at it than I am. And typically it is a pretty awesome buffet of things like green chili. Oh, I make the green chili. I actually do make green chili. We do like shredded pork and chicken tacos and all that kind of good stuff.
This is a bad question for right before dinner. As you talk more, I get hungrier and hungrier as we go along. Mila.
Yeah, that's a wicked question, Dave. My name is Mila Shepard. I'm the Chief of Human Resources, and great to be here tonight. My expectations are we'll do some work to lay some groundwork for some ongoing issues, and I know that we will, just as always, learn a lot from each other and have some great conversations. I have no issues or elephants. I'm answering these questions in the completely wrong order, but we miss Colleen tonight, and we've already talked about the fact that we don't have Shelley with us tonight. Like Matt, I'm not the cook in my house. My husband is an amazing cook, and so he does a standing prime rib roast every year for my family. And so we're not having family over this year, but he announced he's doing one anyway. So I'll be bringing roast beef sandwiches to work for weeks. I'm sure we'll be having a lot of leftover prime rib. My job is take coats and pour wine. So.
Allison, is she on? Oh, there she is. I see her. Gotcha.
I'm here. Hi there. I'm Allison Alter. I am a social studies teacher at Horizon High School. I'm doing pretty good. I managed to get all my finals graded before this meeting, so that was very exciting for me. I also hurt my back somehow. I think just like the abundance of sitting that occurs when you're teaching on Zoom. So I'm gonna have to get up and walk around a little more often than normal just because sitting is difficult. We know who's missing. I don't have any time constraints. My expectations, just get through this agenda. I'm interested to hear some more about some of these things that we were talking about last time and continue on. And then we do a holiday dinner. Normally it was always crab legs growing up. But my sister-in-law joined our family. She's been in our family for a few years now, but she finally spoke up and said she really doesn't like shellfish. So we're making a swap, and we're going to do prime rib and mashed potatoes and Yorkshire pudding. And then my dad's birthday is New Year's Day, so he'll get the crab legs on his birthday, and she just will eat a steak or something.
Teresa.
Hello, everyone. Teresa Barajas, assistant principal at North Glen Middle School. Feeling really good today. Was able to see some of our teachers. We went to deliver some poinsettias at their door. So I'm so excited to be able to see them today. Issues at elephants, I don't have any of those. No time constraints. We know who's missing. Expectations, just that we have a great meeting. And as far as holiday dinner, every year we prep tamales as a family. So we go over to my mother-in-law's, and it's a whole day process. New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve. And the kids join in. I mean, everybody's has a part that they play. My husband likes the easy part of soaking the tamale corn husk part of it because it's the easiest job. So I get really frustrated with him because I'm the one spreading the tamales and folding them, which feels like a lot of work. And we make a lot of tamales, so we have them throughout the year. So that's what we do.
Deborah.
Good afternoon. I am Deborah Blake, special education teacher at Arapahoe Ridge Elementary School. I am really well this evening. No students tomorrow, so I am feeling pretty good right now. I have no time constraints. We know who's missing. Expectations are, as always, to dig in. I'm actually kind of excited to get the year started, weirdly, in this realm. I do not make Christmas dinner because I don't celebrate that holiday. However, I do cook Hanukkah dinner, and for that, we roast a chicken, and I am the potato latke maker. So my house is exceedingly greasy, and my kitchen is greasy and smelly for several days, but I usually make traditional latkes, sweet potato latkes, and I make way too many so that we freeze them and eat them for several days afterwards. So supposedly only half the meal on night one. I think all 8 nights we eat latkes. So that's what we do.
Heather E.
Heather Espinoza, I teach second grade. I am fine, thank you. No time constraints. We know who is missing and we're missing them. Expectations are to learn more and have good conversation this evening. And Christmas dinner is typically a Italian feast in our family.
Oh.
Hi, Bo Fobert. I have the pleasure of serving the district as Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. I've got no time constraints tonight. Doing well. I'm happy to be here. Issue and elephant free. We've covered who's missing. Around my house, it's traditionally always been Christmas Eve. Maternal side of my family is heavily Italian. And so typically generations gather actually this coming weekend to prepare similar to the tamales, but hundreds and hundreds of ravioli. Won't be happening this year as really the sacred group in that effort are all in the high risk category. So we'll certainly be missing that this year, but that's typically produced this weekend and then thoroughly enjoyed with all that wine that Mila pours on Christmas Eve.
Chris. Is Chris on, or did we lose him?
I think we lost him.
He
Okay.
had to step away. I think he was at an appointment, and I'm sure he'll pop back on. And meanwhile, Sandy's cute kitty.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Remind me when he does pop back on, we'll get him checked in too. Heather Gracious.
Good evening, Heather Gracious, Director of Elementary for Student Support Services. I'm great today. I have no time constraints. I don't like to have issues or elephants, so I choose not to have any. I have great expectations of tonight and this group. Shout out to our friends who are missing today. They've been in my thoughts and prayers. And Christmas dinner is evolving in our family. We're just the 3 of us. We have a tiny little family. And so my daughter, being the only child that she is, has requested king crab. So she's a bit ridiculous, but that's okay. She'll get what she wants because she's spoiled, and it's Christmas.
Marty.
Marty McCarthy, principal at Thornton Middle School. No issues or elephants. Just looking forward to continuing the work. We do make Christmas dinner, although usually it's our whole family. This year it'll just be the three of us. Among most of the good things in my life, this Christmas dinner is brought to me from my wife from Britain. So it's a very traditional prime rib, Yorkshire pudding, roast potato, horseradish sauce, Brussels sprouts kind of thing. The pressure's on because I usually do most of the cooking, but my wife does the Yorkshire puddings, which are, the key to the entire meal. And she is not going to do that this year. She's unable to, and I have to, which I'm already sweating about. And I mean, it's just three of us, but the other two are really mean and very critical. So I'm really terrified. So if you have tips, pass them on. And glad to be here. Good to see everybody.
Kathy.
All right, I am really hungry. So I'm Kathy Plomer. I'm on the Board of Education. I'm okay. I'm glad it's Thursday. No time constraints. We've talked about who's missing. Expectations always to just learn so much from everybody. About 4 years ago, we started a new Christmas Eve tradition, and we do fondue.
Oh,
so we do cheese and regular fondue and make all the little sauces and appetizers. So that's been kind of fun. And that's been since we do every other year traveling to Michigan. And so when we're here in Colorado and just our small family, that's what we do Christmas Eve.
Dave Lockley.
Evening, Dave Lockley, president of DTA. I'm doing, I think, as well as everybody is today for the last day of the semester after 9 very long months. I don't have any issues or elephants, no expectations other than just the amazing stuff we always do. I'm bad about paying attention to the list, so I'm just going to jump into the Christmas question. We don't really have much in traditions. Growing up, I grew up in a split family with crazy travel where I had to travel on either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day every single year that I could remember growing up. And so Christmas Eve and Christmas Day was always very hectic growing up. And, as I've become an adult and had children of my own, I really love to cook. And so I get bored cooking the same things all the time. And so what I like to do is find traditional recipes from different parts of the world and try it out. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. But, I think it's all part of the adventure.
Laura Leppi.
Hi, I'm Laura Leppi. I teach middle school math at Hallstrom. I'm doing okay. I haven't eaten lunch yet. I forgot. I had a present left on my doorstep, which was ice cream, and I wasn't there, so I had to go home during lunch and come back to work. So I will eat at some point. Nope. Time constraints. I also have to leave the building at some point because I forgot that we had a meeting until my phone told me. And so at some point I will have to drive home because they kick me out. My poor custodians, I'm sorry. They're lovely. We know who's missing and we love them. Because I forgot about the meeting, I have no expectations, which is great, which means you can't be disappointed. And then I don't have elephants. It'd be cool if there were elephants running around in my classroom, although I don't feel like the district would approve of that. Thank you for typing, Sandy, thank you for typing holiday dinner, because I too do not celebrate Christmas. And I always hated Christmas because growing up, not celebrating it, it always made me feel sad and lonely. And then I think of Miracle Max, where he's like, it's a very painful memory. Why don't you give me a paper cut and pour lemon juice on it? We're closed. So that's how I feel about the Christmases. No offense to people who love it. Have at it. But for holidays, since also PS tonight's Hanukkah, so happy Latkes, Deborah, wherever you are on my screen. Yay. And there's a fabulous video about puppies for Hanukkah. But we don't do, I mean, I don't cook, I store sweaters in my oven. So my family sometimes makes food and I eat it. And it's very weird to watch people laugh silently too. It's fun. We like to go to the movies, and you know, my uncle got us car towed once on Christmas Eve, which was super. I do like Happy Christmas the way the British say it, but I don't like when people are super Christmassy. It freaks me out. So I love all your foods, and I appreciate you making me even more hungry than I already was. And I thank you in advance for letting me eat to fill my stomach. And I'm happy to be back with all the things.
Laura, when you're done teaching, you should consider comedy. You're good. Nancy.
I agree with that, Dave. I'm Nancy Leonard. I'm a retired principal and I'm doing fine. We know who's missing, and my thoughts and prayers also go out to both of them. I don't have any time constraints or issues or elephants. And I guess my expectation is that we will narrow some of the things that we have to accomplish so that we can make that list a little shorter. Normally we do Christmas Eve and we meet at a restaurant, but this year that isn't going to happen. So we're doing a family Zoom at 3 o'clock on Christmas Day, and then Kona Grill is providing my dinner.
Very nice. Laura Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Laura Mitchell. I serve on the Board of Ed. I'm fine. I wore my Christmas sweater just for you guys. I need an occasion to put some nice clothes on every now and then. I don't have any time constraints. We know who's missing, and we, of course, are all thinking about them, as we've talked about. I don't have any issues or elephants, and my expectations are that this is going to be another great meeting to close us out for this semester. And for our holiday dinner, I sure hope my husband is planning on something really yummy. I'm not the cook. I totally rely on him. And unlike some people, I eat what gets put in front of me. I'm not picky. If somebody wants to cook for me, I'm all in. But there's lots of ideas there. I might have to throw some hints around some things. But we can't have fish in our house. My older stepdaughter cannot stand the smell. She will not even sit at the table or come in the room if there's seafood. So the crab legs sound really good, but I don't think we're going to be able to do it this year.
And Chris either got kicked out of his house or he's in transit. Chris?
Hi, Dave. So Chris Gadowski, Superintendent, thank you all for your patience with me. I'm at the vet, had a positive checkup. I'm just going to stay put here for a while so I can continue to engage, but I'm sorry that I missed a number of the check-ins from others on the team. In terms of how I'm doing, I'm tired. It's been a very grueling week with lots of meetings and lots of late meetings in particular, a lot of conflict to work through, and yet I'm hopeful about finishing tonight and our team's meeting in a really productive and positive way. And so even though I'm tired, I look forward to spending time with this group always, and hopeful that we'll finish in a positive way. We've talked about the folks who are missing, no issues or elephants, have the positive expectations that I've mentioned. And as it comes to Christmas, there's a lot of inconsistent about what we do, what we eat, and where we're at. The one common denominator is that Christmas Eve is the focus. And the nice thing about Christmas Eve is it's my birthday. So I always love, I'm grateful to have a Christmas Eve birthday. There's lots of folks around. It's nice to celebrate regardless of where we're at or what we're eating. The other thing I would just toss in as an aside is not only is Christmas Eve my birthday, but it's the time that I leapfrog my brother for the next 11 and a half months because we're Irish twins. And from December 10th to Christmas Eve each year, we're the same age, which this year is 53 for a few more days for me. So good to spend time with you all.
Mr. Jim.
I'm Jim Lohm. I'm one of your facilitators. I'm doing well today, probably better than I have a right to be. The only way I'd be feeling better is if this was the last day of my semester also. But it is a good feeling. Congratulations. It was a tough semester, and I applaud all your work and your effort going into it. We've gone through who is missing. I don't have any issues or elephants. The expectations, I'm really looking forward to the work we're going to do today on the class size issue. We're going to spend about 2 hours on that. There's a lot of good information out there, and we'll get it wrapped up tonight. Question of the day. Christmas dinner for me is always starts with turkey, but it ends up with carrot pudding. And if you haven't ever had carrot pudding, it's carrots and potatoes and dates. And all you use that for is the carrier for the sauce that goes on it. So it's a great meal, if it ends with carrot pudding. It was a recipe that my grandmother brought from England with her, and it was much better than plum pudding that my paternal grandmother brought with her. So I'm looking forward to the day.
And I'm Dave. I'm your other facilitator. Doing better today. My wife did have COVID. She got out of COVID jail last night. Yesterday was her last day, and she's feeling pretty good. She did have kind of a tough time with it, but luckily we didn't have to hospitalize her. And none of the rest of us in our house have tested positive. We've all tested negative. So we did it right. We locked her in the room and brought her meals, and so she's doing fine now. So I'm much better tonight. I have no time constraints. The reason I was a little late is because I just left Pueblo 70, and so jumped on with you right after. And we know who's missing, and like everybody else, in our thoughts and prayers. No issues or elephants. Expectations is you continue to do what you do. You do a great job with this process, and we'll just keep going. Allison, you're going to love this. We do Christmas Eve, and we do crab legs. And my older son and I have a competition about how many we can eat. As I get older, he gets further and further ahead. But I love the crab legs. I look forward to it every year. So, all right. So we are at furlough days, I believe, right? And Chris, you're going to talk about that?
Yeah, we have a little bit of a revision to the published agenda. So in case you looked at what got published publicly, in our shared drive tonight, you'll have a little bit of an update. Things always evolve and shift a little bit as we go live. So yeah, I do want to toss it to Chris.
Okay. Thanks,
Thank
Mila.
you both. So as you'll recall, in last year's negotiations in the spring or into the summer, I think it was frankly summer when we finally resolved compensation, we had a placeholder for 2 furlough days that we tied to where we might stand with enrollment and finances overall. And I believe we've shared in earlier sessions that the enrollment picture is challenging for us. It certainly is, not only for us, but for school districts throughout the state and the country. You may have seen something recently published out in the media indicating that Colorado's public school enrollment is down by about 3.3% on average throughout the state. And it's the first decline in enrollment for our state K-12 system in about 30 years. We've certainly not been immune to that. Our decline was about 5.5%, I believe, according to those published reports, very much in line with what other large metro districts have seen in terms of enrollment decline. In terms of a quantity, the number that Susie's been identifying as 1,985 students down compared to our projections. So a fairly significant reduction. Much of that loss for us, and consistent with others in the state, is at the earliest grades, kindergarten, first and second. In terms of the potential financial impact of that, it could be in the neighborhood of $3.7 to $5 million in terms of a loss of revenue, according to Susie's calculations. It's not the full throttled body blow that we would otherwise receive if you lopped off close to 1,900 students. There's some mitigation of that loss because of some declining enrollment averaging that the state finance formula allows districts to use. And we're still working with CDE to quantify how much that might be. There are 2 things at minimum that I think are, one is more definitive and one is a place of optimism in the financial spot that's different than where we stood back in summer when we made this compensation agreement. One is that the state's economy has recovered in a much more significant way than I think people forecast back in the May, June timeframe. And that's reflected in the governor's budget, that it has no binding effect on the legislature. And of course, things can change in what's forecasted and what actually happens. But his November 1st budget called for the negative factor increase, or the budget stabilization increase that was part of 2021, to be reduced back down for the 21-22 school year. And so the negative factor, I believe, would be in the neighborhood of $587 million, as opposed to the really big number that is this current year that I can't recall off the top of my head. So bottom line is, one important takeaway: the state economy is in a better spot, a significantly better spot at this juncture than was forecast. And that's helpful to us as we map out not only where we are financially this year, but we think ahead to next year as well. The second thing that gives me some hope and optimism is that our Board of Education met within the last 2 weeks with our local legislative delegation. That delegation includes Dominic Moreno, who's the chair of the Joint Budget Committee. And that's a really influential and powerful position, as they do a lot of the budget balancing for the entire state budget, of which K-12 is a big part. And Senator Moreno and his colleagues in that meeting consistently expressed support for maintaining the student count, the funded pupil count, for school districts from the 2019 school year into 2020. That's not a done deal. The governor, I believe, feels differently about that, according to Senator Moreno. And so there will be more dialogue and discussion, and the legislature in the end will not probably finalize any decisions one way or the other until sometime well into January. But I have some optimism at a personal level that there will be some recognition that younger students in particular, because of the pandemic, have elected not to come to school this year, and that at the same time we have many additional costs to serve and respond to our community with COVID. I'm hopeful in the end that we're going to get some relief on the budget in terms of these enrollment declines that we see throughout the region. That's all background. I guess the other piece of background is my best recollection is the amount of money that we forecasted we might recover or save through 2 furlough days, when you look not only at our certified staff, but our classified administrative staff having similar reductions to compensation, that the aggregate would be about $3 million. My recommendation, or my suggestion to this group for consideration and dialogue tonight, is that we make a decision not to go forward with those furlough days this school year. Notwithstanding our significant enrollment decline, I do believe that this more hopeful economic forecast puts us in a better spot than we had expected as we did our work in spring and summer. We're still facing really difficult challenges up ahead. I want to make that clear, but it's not nearly as bad and as dire as I think we all expected it would be. And I just simply believe really strongly at a personal level that, number one, I'm grateful for the work we've done with this team, and that we've done most recently with our classified staff to make modifications to our salary schedules and the cost of steps. And the 1.7% step increase for this current year would largely be eliminated if we did furlough days. I believe, given the very difficult work that staff throughout our system have done this year and will continue this second semester, that moving forward with furlough days sets back our staff in compensation in ways that don't seem to align with what's been expected, and the stress and change and transitions that have gone on and that are going to be ahead of us again in January. I also believe that we can use all of the time that we can to do professional development and to serve our students in person this second semester, and that have days without our staff reporting for duty through furlough days is going to set us back in terms of equipping educators with the skills they need and giving our students the in-person time that they badly require and desire. And so my proposal to this group is that we not move forward with those furlough days. I think we now have more of the puzzle in hand about our finances and our enrollment than we did before. Not all things are definitive and certain, but I feel like, given all of the factors I've described, the right thing to do by both our staff and our students is to forego those furlough days. And I think there'd be benefit if the group agrees to be able to communicate that out to our system tomorrow before individuals head into the holidays, so they know with more confidence what their financial picture looks like in January and for the rest of this school year. So it's a proposal I'd like to toss out there, and I'll turn it back to Dave to facilitate.
Okay, so Chris, are you wanting to take questions on that if people haven't? Okay.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that, Dave.
Okay, sounds good. Questions for Chris on the furlough days? You guys are all just hungry after that question. That's the issue.
That means a lot, Chris. I'm very grateful for your thoughts on that. It means a lot. Thank you.
And so, Chris, I'm assuming that you want a consensus on this tonight. Is that correct?
I think that would be great, Dave. I'd love to see that happen.
Okay. Are we ready to vote then? If you have no other questions, thank you, Sandy. All right, let me see your thumbs on not doing the furlough days. You do have consensus on that. Good job, folks.
Chris, I second Sandy's sentiments. Thank you. I think that's going to go a long way with our teachers and certified and classified staff. I think that sends a big message. Thank you.
All right. It's always fun to start with a success, isn't it? So, Mila, I'm going to let you help me with the, I don't know if I've got the right agenda. So if I, excuse me?
I think Chris has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries, Dave. I was just going to let you all know that I'm going to now sign off for just a few minutes so I can drive back home from the vets, and then I'll rejoin you in about 5 to 10 minutes.
Sounds good. Sorry about that. So Mila, I'm not sure I have the right agenda. I think I do. Are we going to continue with class size now? Is that where we're headed? Okay. All right.
That is where we're
good.
heading. Mm-hmm.
So if you'll look, it is in the Google Docs, what you did last time, I believe, on the 17th. So we want you to take, I believe, a gallery walk, look it over, see if you've got questions.
Yeah, and if you go into the shared drive, and if you'll go into the folder called called remote learning, inside that folder, there's something called remote learning class size charts. And it's the charts document that you want to be looking at to refresh yourself to the story and the interests that we identified last time.
And I'm seeing a lot of people pop into it, Mila, so I think we're in pretty good shape. So do a gallery walk, look through it real quick. We'll give you a few minutes, and then we're going to tie back into it. And I believe we did story and interests last time. We didn't get to options, I don't believe, right?
Well, the last time we did not have the face-to-face report data. And so we said, let's just time out where we are. Dave, once we've done this gallery walk, Dave is going to share some trend analysis from the face-to-face report. And you all got a copy of that a week or two ago. I emailed it to you. So we'll take any comments that other people have, any observations or questions. Dave will share some trends. We'll add that into story. And then we'll pick up where we left off with the process.
Thanks, Mila.
Not that you should preview it first, because you should be good students and wait, keep the paper face down on your desk. The conclusions document and the face-to-face reports are also in that folder for your perusal later on, if you want something to reflect back on. But keep it face down. No cheating. I see you there, Miss Plomer.
And you all give me the high sign when you want to go to Dave. Allison, do you have sound now? Allison, can you hear us? How we doing? Are we about ready for Dave?
To wrap up, Dave.
Okay, sounds good.
Or at least see if she can get reconnected.
Yeah.
When we finish up, that way you can hear it.
Okay. Here she comes back on, Dave. Do you have sound now, Allison?
Yes, sorry, I have no idea what happened, but
Nope, no problem. We just wanted to make sure you're hearing us. All right, folks, are we ready for Dave then? I'm seeing some nodding heads, so.
I'm just gonna get going anyways, and if they're not ready, they can.
They'll stop you.
Yeah, pretty much. So, like we were saying before, you guys received a copy of the face-to-face report. Same with everyone in the district receiving that. And what that does is it looks at what is the class size of every section, every building across our entire system. So needless to say, there are literally thousands of sections that are looked at. Normally, when we're looking at those sections, they're all in-person classes. They're all very similar to each other. So we can say, math classes at Horizon look like this. Math classes across the district look like this. This year, we have the added wrinkles of remote classes. We had the added wrinkle of simultaneous instruction classes, where we had some classes that had in-person learners and remote learners. And the additional wrinkle that we are changing the secondary model again, so that they are now all simultaneous or online. So they're no longer hybrid and simultaneous and all these other factors. So what I tried to do is, after looking and analyzing all of those thousands of sections, which is no small task, was to try to come up with some general conclusions around what is the most true statements that can be made about all of these classes, because they are very difficult to analyze. I can't just take a class mathematical average, because there are certain classes that are historically larger. You have, band classes and other classes that are historically larger than an ELL class. And so you can't just take like large scales and then do it. You have to compare, historical averages compared to what they are now, compared to what they are compared to remote and online, high school to high school, system to system. So it's very difficult I can't just give like a number. And so when Mylan and I discussed this, and from our conversations last time, we thought it would be better just to do a couple high level conclusions. In the face-to-face report, you can find exceptions that disprove all of these. You know, it's that old phrase, like the exceptions that prove the rules of all of these conclusions. But these are some of the high level conclusions that can be drawn by looking at all of these classes across the system. First is that there is no universal statement that can be made about remote or in-person classes. We have remote classes that are the same size as their in-person colleagues. We have remote classes that are smaller than their in-person colleagues. We have remote classes that are at their historical averages. We have ones that are above and below their historical averages. Because of the nature of the redesign of courses this year, no universal statement can be made. There can be some that they tend to or trend to statements that can be made, which I'll go over, but no universal statement can be made about any of them, other than that our in-person classes tend to be smaller than their historical averages, but not all. And definitely, I don't know if I would even use the word most. I would say they tend to be. All of our elementary remote classes are within 3 of what we would look or less of their historical class sizes and or the threshold classes. The thresholds that we use are different for title schools versus non-title schools for different grade levels, but it's what it's used to determine when we look at class size adjustments at the in August through our FTE committee. That we say if it's not above this number, then we don't start talking about giving new sections. So what can be said is that the vast majority of our online classes are actually within those thresholds. Very few of them tend to be above those thresholds, but all of them are within 3 of the thresholds that are established. Compared to elementary schools, there is a smaller proportion of secondary teachers with a purely remote assignment. What that means is, an elementary teacher is either online or they're not, for the most part. A secondary teacher, there are secondary teachers that are quote unquote purely remote, meaning all of their sections are serving remote students. But the majority of them across the whole system are not. They have assignments that look like 2 in person and 3 online, or vice versa, or some kind of combination of assignments. So very few of them, compared to elementary school, have ones that are one or the other. Secondary teachers, our teachers at the secondary level with combination assignments have caseloads that are similar to historical averages. Some are a little bit smaller, some are a little bit larger, but it's right about the same spot of their historical averages if you were to compare that same school to what it was a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. So when you look at the historical averages on the face-to-face reports and take a secondary teacher's entire caseload, their numbers are similar. Not the same. And yes, there are teachers with ones that are higher and ones that are lower. We're talking large trend data. Teachers that have a purely remote assignment at the secondary level have historic caseloads that are within 12 students of their historical averages when looking across the entire system. Teachers at the secondary level with purely remote assignments tend to have caseloads, in-person assignments tend to have caseloads that are within 10 of their historical averages. Now, I keep using the word historical averages compared to their one colleague versus another, and I'll explain that right now. Why is because I have to be honest, when looking at even an individual school or department, it is all over the place. You know, sometimes there are class sizes that are 17, 24, and 40, all for the same teacher. You know, it is just all over the place. And so it is really difficult to compare class to class. And so how I was able to make any sense of it was to take it a step back and not look at it by individual classes, but by what was the entire number of students that educators were responsible, for. And so those were just some of the high trends that I was able to identify. What I would say, I didn't write this into this document, but one of the conclusions or thoughts that I had that I came to when I look at all of these facts is that in any year we have classes and educators that have assignments that have more students than others for lots of different reasons. And for years through our contract, we have language that asks schools to work with those educators to address those individual issues on one-off cases. What I saw through this data was that we don't have a district level answer that I think we can say is that is the case. Math classes across the district aren't larger or smaller. They're all over the place, as an example. And so it's going to be really difficult based on this data to make a generalized statement about in-person or remote classes that address the fact that some educators have individual classes or caseloads that are larger than their colleagues or larger than they have been historically. Because like I said, it's just all over the board as far as what that ends up looking like. So I'm going to pause and take questions either about my conclusions, the face-to-face report, any of that kind of stuff. Mila will be my phone a friend to help me out through that. But I would also just point out, I'm trying not to get too far in the weeds. So please don't ask me, why are math classes at Horizon 33, 19, and 26? Because I cannot answer that question. Just forewarned, if we get too far down into the weeds, I'm going to have to just say, we'll have to pause. And if you really need that answer, we'll have to get to you at a different time.
All right, if you have a question for Dave, please raise your hand in the participants box, please. I still see some people kind of looking.
So thorough that nobody was going to have any questions whatsoever.
Either that or this group is just not asking questions tonight. So
no, I just was going to say, I tried to look through that data and I just appreciate you doing a lot of that work for us because it was a lot. And I certainly didn't have time to look through it on that level. So I just appreciate it.
Yeah, and that's why we did it, just because there was no way we expected any of you guys to look at thousands of things and try to compare them in different manners and different ways. And so, yeah.
Okay.
Dave often makes the point that this is the world we live in. This is the language we speak. We see this report every year. And all of that is true, but I appreciate my numbers friend geeking out on the data and and doing the analysis.
Any questions? Laura.
I just have a clarifying question because I don't know that you started to talk about some of the history of it. So in the past, when we had normal years, they just, if there was a class that was enormous or super small, then the principals came in and shifted numbers, or like the district added a person or took a person away. Is that correct?
I mean, yeah, I mean, so this is, I'll answer that, I think, in two ways. First, you know, at the beginning of the school year, we have an enrollment reserve committee, which is partially a function of our contract, not solely, but partially kind of the genesis of it came out of the contract, where at the beginning of the school year, in the budget, Chris often sets aside a certain number of FTE that can be deployed as students enroll and actually start showing up into the district. And so that process has existed for a long time. And, you know, at the beginning of the school year, we deploy that FTE based on, you know, certain thresholds and that kind of stuff to try to alleviate these kind of issues. Because, you know, you might think, you know, you got the right number of kids because there's 500 kids at a school, divide that by X number of teachers. But what inevitably happens, no matter how perfect you get that 500 number, you get more third graders than you get fourth graders or more second graders or something like that. And so there are adjustments that need to be made. So that's you know, the first thing that happens. After all those adjustments are made and that kind of stuff, let's say, I'm going to give an example. You know, you're a math teacher at Holstrom or at Thornton or something like that. And because of a functionality of either, you know, just the number of students in an individual sections or the needs of the students in that section, you just have a caseload or a class size that you as an educator raise your hand. It's like, this doesn't match what my colleagues are doing. It's either larger, I've got more IAP students, pick your poison of a different reason. You raise your hand and say, I need help with this class. And then there's a process that you know, works with your building rep, your building principal. Sometimes it comes up to my level and the executive directors. But basically, we look at it and try to problem solve and help you get assistance, change schedules of students, maybe bring in a para, maybe give you some additional work time. There's like a menu of strategies that are used to help address an individual issue so that you as the educator have what you need to be able to support all the students inside either that individual class or your entire caseload. And so that's the class size caseload language in our contract we employ on a regular basis. You know, I would say in any given year, I probably deal in that space a dozen times, maybe across our system. Me personally, it's probably done automatically in many buildings, just as part of their normal par for the course. You know, you have a math class or a social studies class that's bigger than the others, and you just can't adjust it for whatever reason. So the principal said, right, I'm going to get you a para to come in that classroom, or I'm going to ask you, you don't have to do after school duty so that you have a little bit more time for work, or, you know, something like that. You know, like I said, a lot of it's just done automatically. Sometimes it goes through the formal process that myself or an executive director or something might get involved in. But that happens every year in almost every building. Like I said, it comes to me maybe 12 times a year at my level, but that means that there's probably dozens more that were solved long before it came to my level. Does that answer your question?
Dorman.
When you, or when the document says within 12 students of historical averages or within 10 students of historical averages in the two last bullets of secondary, does that mean could be 12 higher, could be 12 lower, or is there a range of 24 there? What?
So for the in-person, it really is. Some of them are slightly larger than historical averages because of just the nature of the schedule, but it's all within 10 of the historical average number, either higher or lower. The in-person tend to be within 10 lower. The remote tend to be within 10 higher. than their historical averages. But there are some that, because of the nature, and this is the case every year, that are smaller or larger, even in this remote, crazy setting we're in, that aren't at that historical average mark number. But the in-person tend to be smaller than average total wise, and the remote tend to be larger if you have a purely remote assignment.
I have a follow-up question. And so I don't know if anybody can answer this or not. I think I know the answer, but when we assigned all these students to these classes, I think the purpose was more of a customer service as to what the parents and families needed to best serve them. We didn't do it for academic purposes necessarily. We didn't say these class sizes are appropriate for this particular type of learning. We did it more for customer services. That's my general understanding.
Yeah, I'll add part of it, and I think Marty wants to answer the rest as a person who did a lot of scheduling. I think that we definitely created thresholds for especially our elementaries based on safety. How many kids can we safely put into a classroom based on health and safety guidances? And that drove a lot of the secondary conversation as well. But Marty, why don't you talk more about it, since you were a master scheduler there down at International.
I mean, Dave's right. You know, the first consideration were the thresholds of class sizes and the space limitations that rooms had. But also, when we went to two different models, so a remote and a hybrid, we had to increase the number of sections of certain specialty classes that we had. So honors math, special ed classes, ELL classes, even in the elective range, you know, like Spanish for native speakers, you had to offer them in two different arenas before we were able to adopt simultaneous learning, which caused, you know, with very limited places or time spots that you could put those unique sections, then it creates bubbles or abnormalities that you could probably better balance out with more flexibility in staff and scheduling. So really, I think a lot of what the high level summary of this is a reflection of trying to adapt to the two different models and staff it, you know, with those constraints along with the health constraints. I hope that helps, Dorman.
Laura Leppi, did you have more of your hand still up, or did you just forget to put your hand down?
No, it won't let me put it down.
Oh, okay.
I can't figure out.
You're just permanently up, so you have to talk the entire time. So.
I'll just sit here like this the whole time too. It'll be perfect.
Somebody took it down. It's down now. Any other questions for Dave or Marty? All right. Oh, Linda.
How far back does the historical data go?
Say that again, Linda.
So
back when you talk about historical averages, are you talking 5 years, 8 years, 10 years?
Yep. So in the face-to-face report folder, you'll that there is a summary document that's 2010 to 2020. Okay. That's the range that we are using to identify as quote unquote historical. So I may not have all the data there. I have a report that I use to calculate that that's a little bit more thorough, but that's the range that we're using.
Okay. Any other questions? Kathy.
So you mentioned earlier in previous years, there was like a menu of things that you could do, like someone maybe got an aid or whatever. Were there any menu of items or help used for when you saw bubbles during this time or not?
So I think there's like two parts. It's like a 2-half story, right? Yes, I would say 100%, right? When we started doing things like removing, when we moved to remote learning for all the systems or the secondary, and we started reshuffling all of the like classified staff and that kind of stuff, there definitely was a lot more of them being moved into, as like I was saying, class aides and that kind of stuff. Many buildings kind of naturally just started, like I was saying before, they just do it as part of their normal course of action. You know, some schools are just naturally, oh, I froze, I think. Yeah.
Your face is froze, but we can still hear you, Dave.
All right, I'm back. All right, you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Everyone froze and it said I was unstable. So I was like, oh, I should pause for a second until that fixes it.
We've known that about you for a long time, Dave. So
true enough. True enough. You know, definitely those menus of options were definitely automatically employed by many principals, not necessarily all principals, but by many principals across the system as just par for the course. You see a struggling teacher or a teacher who needs some help, and so you go help them because that's what we do. And so, you know, can I tell you that every one of those teachers that have a larger than average class size got a para or an extra work time? No, I can't tell you that as a fact. Do I know and have full faith that anybody who went to their principal and said, oh my gosh, I need help, got help of some kind? Absolutely. I have full faith that that happened because I have faith in our principals and our system to do that. Oftentimes when it came up to my level, those 12, 14 times or whatever a year, it's usually because a principal doesn't have enough resources or doesn't have a para hour or doesn't have budget to be able to help in that circumstance. That's usually when it comes to me. It's usually handled long before it comes to me because they were able to accommodate it within the resources that they had available to them.
Marty, you were nodding your head. Did you have any more on that, or?
No, I think Dave said it well. I just, you know, there were, I mean, it's to students' best interest to keep class sizes as manageable as possible. And so I think that usually every effort is made to do that. It's those situations where there's truly a lack of resources to be able to accomplish it that it doesn't get done for whatever reason. I also, you know, I think that there was uncertainty around that this year. And Dave, correct me if I'm misspeaking, but it felt like there was uncertainty around this space a little bit more this year because there was kind of an unknown of what the threshold should be for, say, fully remote classes compared to hybrid or full in-person classes. And so there was a lot of conversation, I know, among principals about like how many should be, like where should the line be drawn where we're thinking this is unmanageable or unequitable. And which is probably why we're here talking about it now. So.
Yeah, I would agree with your conclusion. Absolutely. It was a lot harder to schedule because you didn't have that natural sense, right? Like Marty, as a veteran principal, knows that having X number of kids in a 6th grade math class is the reasonable number because he's been watching 6th grade math classes for a really long time and he knows, and the system knows really what that looks like. In the remote setting, not as much. The other thing I would just point to is that, you know, I said this happens every year. I think what also happened was that there's just a much higher number of these issues this year than in previous years, which taps any resource that you have. You know, we didn't, you know, even with the additional help of some of our classified staff, which were a great help to many of those larger remote classes, especially at the elementary level. You know, you got the 2-part fears of once we go back in person, those people have jobs and that they need to go do. And so we will have less access to that. And it becomes kind of a resource issue, meaning there just wasn't or a fear of there not being enough resources once we go back to having the split schedules where we're not all remote again.
Other questions?
Dave, I have a question / comment. I think in addition to the uncertainty about what class size thresholds should be, I think there was a lot of uncertainty by teachers about what am I going to be able to handle. And so initially, when you saw a roster, I'm sure as a teacher, you were like, I just don't know what that's going to look like. And so now we're this many months down the road, and I think people have a better sense of, 32 felt like horrible, but it's manageable. Perhaps that's happening, I think, across the board. And I want to just check that assumption with Dave. And then I want to ask you, Dave, do you feel like, based on what you're describing, as it kind of, our typical practice is this sort of case-by-case troubleshooting when we do have an anomaly, an outlier, and a situation where there's not enough resources to just handle it. Do you feel like, based on what you saw and the numbers of what you saw, that we really could handle it in that sort of case-by-case basis now that we've been in it for a little while, now that we've actually seen this data? Does it feel like it might be able to be handled in a fairly traditional manner, which is to say case by case?
Yeah, so I'll answer your question first. I think it was both ways. There were some people who looked at it and said, that's too many kids, I don't know what to do. And other people who said, I could do for this many kids, no problem. And that didn't end up being the case, right? I think every year that happens in both directions. I remember for every year at FCE committee, somebody brings up some crazy plan that says, all right, we're going to do these 5 things and recombine the kids and do literacy relief for 5 hours or whatever. And I look at it and be like, we should not approve this, because by October, they're going to say it's going to all fall apart and be a disaster, right? I mean, you've seen those too, Mila, right? And so I think it happens in both directions. Absolutely. I think now people will have a much better understanding of, one, is this number the right number for me, and what help, more specifically, what if it's not, what help do I actually need? Because a principal, you may say, go to your principal, in September when we did these assignments for maybe a large elementary class, for example, and say, oh my gosh, 35 fifth graders, what am I going to do about that? I don't know what to do. And you're freaking out, but you also don't know what you need. You can't go to your principal and say, I need this. And that's what I find the case that when we do these adjustments, it works best when there's a specific understanding of what the need is of the educator to make it successful for them. You're asking, the second part is asking me an opinion question. I think, to answer your question, it has an assumption built into my answer. And I'm going to say my assumption first, and then give you an answer to that question based on the scope question. So the assumption is that we are changing our consideration for our classroom teachers to be talking about caseload and not class size and individual class size. So traditionally, we have always, for classroom teachers, I think I said at the beginning, looked at and dealt in the individual class space. You may have a class of 21, but this class of 40 eighth graders taking math is too many eighth graders taking math. Let's go fix that problem. Right? Now, Marty would never let that happen, and now I'm frozen again, I think. So I'm going to pause. Sorry.
We can still hear you, Dave.
Oh, can you? Okay. Thank you. Just yell at me if you can't, or text me or something. Not that Marty would ever let 40 eighth graders be in a math class. But you get my point, right? We dealt with that 40 class, that's too big. Let's go deal with that. In order to, if we're looking at these remote classes, because some are smaller, some are bigger, and we move to talking about remote classes specifically in the total caseload case, how many students do I, how many, as my my friend Steve Lash, the English teacher, says, how many essays do I actually have to grade? You know, that at the end of the day, that's the biggest determination of how much work I've got, is how many of those darn essays do I have to get back to the students? And if we change our thinking, agree here for these remote classes to change our thinking to total caseload versus an individual class size, then I do think there is the scope of teachers who have case loads that are much bigger than historical averages and or their colleagues becomes a handful at each building versus, you know, tens of hundreds of educators across the system. So those are very different ways of looking at it and a very different answer. If we're looking at just individual classes, there are hundreds of sections that are bigger than historical averages and their colleagues, significantly bigger because of the remote nature of their class.
I have Allison and then Marty.
Mine was, I think Dave was answering it as he was speaking, so I'm good.
Okay, Marty?
I think too, with the simultaneous learning model, we have a better tool to provide relief for teachers. In the previous model, like, there was no room to have a student be in a different model class. And so that really constrained, like, if you only had one, so in like middle school, if you only had one remote core, you know, you couldn't, there was no way to get them instruction in another way except through that core. Well, now we could have a remote student be in a hybrid class and just access the learning remotely every day. And so it allows some more flexibility. So I would be more confident in being able to solve these problems at a building level more consistently.
Other questions? All right, Dave, Mila, I don't see any. So you said that you're going to put this as part of story, Dave. You're going to enter this as part of story so that it can be considered as we're walking through.
Yep.
So I'm assuming we want to go back now to the process. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I took the liberty, Dave, and correct me if I'm wrong, the last two bullets in the story on our charts form are Dave's analysis of a face-to-face report reveals that it's difficult to make a generalized statement about any particular subject area, level, or instructional model. There's not a particular district trend that can be identified. So I was listening as you were talking and captured that. If that's not exactly what you wanted to say, feel free to amend it. And then I added, while we were talking, it felt like this was story, that there was uncertainty about what class size threshold should be this year. And I don't think that had been previously captured. So if either of those is not agreeable to the group, take them out. But I put those two in as story.
Thank you for doing that, Mila. Any objecting? Let me say that again. Any objection to those two pieces of story being in the story?
It seems to me the
story,
part of the
so
story.
dang it, I can say it if I want to say it.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Part of what Dave talked about also was going beyond just class size. And you might want to make that part of the story also.
All right, so I want you had a chance to look at the story. You had a chance to look over the interests that we have. We have about a page and a quarter of interests in there. Mila added a couple things to story. Is there anything else that you need to add to story or interests before we move on down?
Yeah, I just put my hand up in the thing.
Sorry, Sandy,
So,
thank you.
I'm trying to figure out how to word it, but I was just doing a little number crunching.
And is this part of story, Sandy?
Yeah,
okay,
this is
thank
story.
You.
In my department, I have 126 students, and another colleague has 166 students. And actually, that's the one I was referring to back when I was talking about cybersecurity class. It's the same teacher.
How many do you have, Sandy?
Yeah, give the numbers again, please.
I have 126, and the other teacher has 166 students total.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Sandy, before I go to Dave? Okay, Dave.
Nope.
You can tell me this is an option, not an interest. That's fine. But I have an interest in using tools that we normally employ.
It's close to both, so we can drop it down as we move along, Dave. It would fit in either section. Okay, Allison.
I just had a quick question for Sandy. Are you both fully in person, fully remote, or are you somewhere in the middle space?
She is fully remote. Good point. I am, or will be, or was hybrid. And hybrid and remote. Yeah.
Okay. So Sandy and Allison, your hands are still up. Sandy, did you have more, or you just, yeah, can't get your hand down? Okay, there you go. Any other story or interest that we need to put in before we move on to options? Sorry. Mila.
I have an interest in Dave's assumption. I have an interest in using caseloads versus class sizes for this consideration.
Kathy.
And I apologize, I should have the list up. But question, I don't know how, will we have a chance to mitigate this next semester, or does the same thing keep going? Like, I know there's some classes that
I can
change.
try to answer that question. Because of the change in number of students and selections and the simultaneous instruction that you were talking about, it will continue to be an issue. The places that it will be an issue may just change. So I wouldn't be able to look at a list right now and say, Mrs. Smith's class at Thornton is a problem, so we should fix Mrs. Smith's class because it's too big. Because Mrs. Smith's class may be not too big next semester. Does that make sense? And so will continue to be an issue. It's just, I can't tell you where those issues will exactly be until all of the enrollment stabilizes again, which is why we do the face-to-face reports when we do in that October, November timeframe, and in February after everything stabilizes.
Thank you.
I have Allison and then Marty.
So mine kind of goes along with what Mila and Dave just said, but in addition to case load rather than class size, I think somewhere in there we also need to consider special populations, and the fact that modifications for certain populations take up a lot of time. So I don't know how to quite put that in there, but I have an interest in also having that in there.
And Jim did add it to the interest, Allison. So
one thing I'm going to drop into our shared drive is the document that directors and I use when going through it at our level for how to like the questions we ask and the things that we look at, because that is one of the considerations and part of the the package of things that we look at when we're trying to figure out what to do or how to solve the issue. So I'll drop that into the shared drive. I mean, it'll take me a minute to pull it off my computer and get it up there, but for your later perusing and understanding. But yes, Allison, in our normal process, that is part of the consideration. It's not a determining factor. It's not like you have 12 special education students and you get a para. That's not how it works. It's just part of the portfolio or the whole picture that we look at that time. I don't know, Bo, I know you're part of those conversations. If there's anything you would add to that space.
Okay, Marty.
I was just going to respond to Kathy a little bit as well. I think that in the secondary realm anyway, many schools are working on modifying schedules and changing schedules to reflect the new models. And the impetus for that was to more balance classes and lessen teachers' loads when they were too high. So, I mean, Dave's right. Things change. We'll have different spots, but I do think the overall impact will be that there will be less of these after adjustments are made. I don't know, Teresa, if you experience the same thing at North Clem.
Yes, Marty, same thing.
I definitely think at the secondary, there's a lot of opportunity. I think at the elementary, we remain like there's less options to do because there's only so many remote fifth grade sections and you can't simulcast a fifth grader into their in-person class. So there'll be less changes.
Totally agree with that, Dave.
All right, Linda.
The concern I've had, this is part of story, I think, over the years, is that what we have seen is the acceptable top level number of kids allowed in a class has grown and grown and grown. I want us to be very careful about not making the norm higher and higher and higher every year. Does that make sense to you all? When I started in 1976, 28 was considered the max at the high school level. My guess is you'd probably be hard pressed to find, unless it was a specialty class, a class of 28 anymore. So I just want us to be cognizant of, as we make these decisions, that we don't continue to push those boundaries of what's an acceptable size class further and further up. If I'm teaching 5 sections of 30, and that's the norm, that's 150 kids. If I'm teaching 5 sections of 35, it's like teaching another section. So, just from a historical point of view, I guess that's a concern that I've had over the years, is that we just continue to push that.
Allison, your hand's still up. Did you have more? Okay.
I think this is a function of Roddy usually makes me a co-host and I'm like really prejudicious about like lowering people's hands, and people have forgotten to lower their own hands. And since I'm not a co-host, I haven't been doing that today.
Gotcha, Dave. I just don't want to miss somebody or miss something that somebody needs to get on there.
I actually have something to add.
All right. Thank you, Allison.
So this probably goes back to story. I guess this is strictly for remote class sizes. Is that correct? Not for all class sizes. Okay. Then I don't think I need to add that. I take it back.
Okay. All right. She doesn't want to put it on there, Jim. Any other story or interests? Any other story or interests? Give you a few seconds to think, and then we're going to move on to options.
Dave, did you want to take a short break?
Yeah, we've been at it for quite a while, haven't we? Thank you, Jim. Can we take 10 minutes or so? Does that work? All right, 10-minute break, and then we'll come back to options. All right.
So that'd be what, 6:15?
6:15. Yep.
Okay.
set a timer for 8 minutes.
Okay, 8 minutes and counting.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Allison, can you hear us?
I had to mess with, I hooked up all my new stuff that I got from school today, all our new tech. And so the sound is being funky, but so I played with over break. I think we're good.
Gotcha.
Hey, Allison, I have to tell you, you have me hooked on these gin-gins. And I had to order like 12 boxes of it. So if you need any, let me know.
Okay. Did you get them off Amazon?
I did.
Yeah. I think I got like a 5-pound bag one time and I got made fun of. And then the next thing you know, my husband was hooked on them too. So it happens.
I think those things are great. I thought I was the only one that ate them.
Oh, love that.
Love them.
Oh, I love them. They sell them at Whole Foods. So, and they always have them right at the checkout. So I always drop a box on my.
Yeah.
I'm going to play stupid. What are they?
It's a little like chewable or candy you can suck on that's made out of ginger.
Okay. Oh, okay.
They're like chewy. They're a little spicy.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Really
but
good if you have an upset stomach, or I mean, I just like one in the evening, just like after dinner, I peel one. But they're great if you have ginger's great if you're not feeling well. If you're
and
I use them for motion sickness.
Ah.
Yeah, they're good for dizziness. So.
Yeah, we're starting to get back.
I feel like I should tell anyone who had any sort of hand in getting all this new tech. I feel so fancy. I have like a computer and a giant monitor, which like no one has seen my house, but my house is like really tiny. So I was like, where am I going to put all this stuff? But I feel really fancy. I got a lot of screens going on.
The tech is amazing. I would like to reiterate that. It is beautiful. I cannot even handle the screens.
I went ahead and, as Mila says, took the liberty of typing one other thing on story. So when we get back, if we want to, I want to make sure everybody sees that.
Okay, Sandy, I'll put you on the list here and you can start with that when everybody gets back, okay?
Allison, I feel all left out. I didn't get any new tech, which is a good thing from my perspective and for the students, but I didn't get any new tech.
Oh, well, to be fair, I had a MacBook Pro that I think was 12 years old. And the district was like, you have to give that back. And so then they gave me a Chromebook Plus that couldn't handle Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, never mind, keep your MacBook. So I got one of the new Dells. So like, it was only because my computer was really not able to support anything.
And I think, Deborah, the other thing is a lot of this tech is directed at secondary to support the simultaneous instruction, which Bo is just typing. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not upset. I'm teasing.
No, I know.
But I tell you, the less tech for Deborah, the better.
All right, folks, I think we're back. Sandy, do you want to talk about what you added to story?
Yeah, I got some more inside info that just to draw my attention to a couple of other teachers in my building, Northglenn High School. I added that another remote colleague at NGHS has 176 students, which just happens to be 50 more students than I have as a hybrid in person.
Okay. And is there other story added as well? I'm looking here. No, those are the ones that we added before, aren't they? Okay. All right.
Can I just add,
Go ahead.
Once again, there are tons of disparities all across the system. My analysis was based on whole system trends, looking at thousands of sections, not one-off, individual sections. There were, as I pointed out, lots of examples like Sandy's, where there was a noticeable disparity that needed to be adjusted. My trend was based on, like I said, looking at all of those sections across the entire district and whatnot. So
that I wanted to go in writing on the story. So.
All right.
I was just reminding that my analysis was based on like looking at the whole picture, not to that granular level.
All right. So do we have any other story, any other interests before we start into options? All right. We can always add more as we go along. So we're going to start on options now. Jim, are you good to continue typing, or do you want to run the options and I'll type for a while?
Either way, I'm fine typing, I think.
Okay.
Are we going to watch football? I want to see somebody run the option.
All right. So I'm going to go down the list. I'm going to just start down the list and call for options. And then as we work through them, then we'll popcorn after that. So Dorman, an option.
I'll pass for now.
Okay. Jim, are you ready to go?
I was, but I was in a Word document, so let me come back.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready, Jim.
That. Sure. Sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, I see you there, Jim. Are you ready then? Okay. All right, I think we're set. Kristen, an option.
I'm going to pass for now. This is my first time doing options, so I kind of want to see what that's all about.
Not a problem. And just Kristen, for your information, it's a way to solve the problem. Options are brainstorming, so anything goes, anything you want to throw up, and the more options we get, the better solution we usually get. So just to remind you of that. Linda.
I'm going to pass for now also.
Okay, Sandy.
In building staff, schedule makers, whoever those are. I guess I'm speaking to the secondary level, right? Find the outliers that were mentioned a minute ago of those remote teachers and even out their caseloads within 10 students of each other.
Okay, and Jim, you, for some reason, you have it. Yeah, there you go. Okay. All right, so Matt.
Continue to use standard process for dealing with scheduling abnormalities.
And Mila.
I mentioned it in interests, but I think it was sort of an option. So I'll restate my wish that we could use caseloads rather than class sizes for this calculation.
All right, Allison.
I don't know if this is fully an option, but determine different appropriate caseload sizes for remote versus in-person versus hybrid.
That is an option, Allison.
Yay.
All right, Teresa.
I'm going to pass. Matt mentioned what I wanted to say.
Okay. Deborah.
I'm going to pass right now. I'm still wordsmithing.
Okay. Heather Espinoza.
Maintain historical in-person thresholds or averages for remote classes.
Bo.
Mine was also represented by Mr. Schmidt.
All righty, Chris.
I'm going to pass.
All right, Heather Gracious.
I'm going to pass too. Mine's up there.
Marty.
Mr. Schmidt also spoke for me.
Kathy.
As we're hiring new people, the classroom monitors and the new people, assign them to teachers with higher remote responsibilities to help with non-teaching tasks, like entering data and all that stuff. Which I don't know if is realistic at all, but you know,
it's an option.
it's an option.
Dave Luckley.
I would, it's similar to what Kathy just said, but for our elementary remote classes that are larger than our normal historical sizes, assign literacy relief teachers to help with reading groups. Technically, I said assign, not hire.
Okay.
It's the same thing, I'm sure, but just technically I said assign.
Okay. There you go. Laura Leppy.
Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me. I apologize. I'm in my car. I lost my keys in my room and had to go find my custodian since I'm not home yet. But my option, Allison kind of stole mine, and so I'm similar to Kathy, I guess, sort of. But have a structure in place for when classes meet the caseload threshold for how to alleviate the issue.
All righty, Nancy.
I'll pass. Mine's up there.
All right, Laura Mitchell.
I'm going to pass. I think there's anything, all my ideas are in there somewhere.
Okay. Allison, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question is why I put my
Okay.
hand up. And I may have missed this when my sound cut out and I couldn't hear anything you all were saying. So I'm sorry. But I'm still just having a little trouble kind of like wrapping my brain around this because it sounds like we're talking about an issue right now, but then also like where we're headed in the future with future online school and like keeping something online. Is that correct?
Dave?
Yeah, I mean, it's a yes. We are dealing with a current issue and wrestling around and really defining if it is an issue or if it is an issue, how to handle it. But also, as I mentioned last time when we met in our last session, a lot of the work that we're doing right now applies to, depending on what Mr. Filbert has to share with us in his section later on in the agenda, what work we need to do and start thinking about for our whatever our remote program looks like next year. So it's kind of killing two birds with one stone a little bit right now, because this is a conversation that we will have to have depending on how the remote learning plays out over time once we move out of the kind of emergency space that we live in right now with our remote programs and the pandemic and everything else.
Okay. So I just to clarify, so like we are solving a problem right now and we may use some of this language later once we decide, but like we're not deciding for something because I'm having trouble deciding for something that I don't know about. But if I know I'm just trying to solve a problem, like I'm over here and not over here, that would help me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're solving the current problem right now. And we are going to apply lessons learned from this conversation when we have a larger conversation later on.
Okay, I'm with you now. Thank you.
All right. I'm back to Dorman. Option.
I'm good. Pass.
Kristen.
I'm going to pass.
All right. Thank you. Linda.
Pass.
Okay. Sandy.
HR, reconsider the applicants who were denied remote only instruction and reconsider that criteria. Or those criteria, I don't know. Reconsider those criteria, Jim.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Matt.
Marty's got his hand up. I think he had a quick question.
Oh, sorry, Marty. Sorry, I didn't see you. Marty, go ahead.
I just love for Sandy. I don't know if this is the space. I guess I'm struggling to see how that option addresses the problem. And
Marty, just to a process bit is this is brainstorming, so anything goes. You can talk about that when you get into straw design, but we don't judge the options until you go to straw design. So.
No, I wasn't judging. I was just seeking to understand, but that's okay. Yeah.
I can clarify if.
Yep, please do.
That's okay. Just as a way to spread out students. If there's not enough remote teachers, then we could, if we had more, then maybe it would even out the numbers is what I was going for.
Okay. So you were seeking clarity, Marty. Sorry, I misunderstood you. Matt.
I'm all good. Pass.
Mila.
I think my interests are up on the board already.
Okay, Allison?
Shuffle, and this is strictly for secondary, but shuffle students where applicable between the 5 high schools. Someone's going to hate me for saying that, I think. It's an option.
It's an option. Don't even judge your own, Allison. All right, Teresa.
I'm going to pass.
Okay, Deborah.
When looking at special ed or other special populations for remote classes, let's take their actual service minutes into consideration, not just weighing their area of identification. And I guess for clarification for that, 18 or 20 or 24 students being served by a special education teacher might sound like it's a little less than a typical remote teacher, but a student may have 240 literacy minutes alone. And so it's very difficult for that remote teacher to meet all of the minutes. So let's not just look at identification to determine caseload. Let's look at actual service minutes.
Okay, would you look at what Jim put there, Deborah, and see if that's what you wanted?
While you're doing that, I'm also
as opposed to area of identification.
add that to the story piece because Deb just added a piece of story around the difficulty of servicing service minutes in a remote setting.
So Dave, what did you want? You kind of blurped out on us there for a little bit. Say it again.
Sorry. I'm asking if Deb wants to add that to story as well. Because she mentioned we don't have in there anything about the difficulty of meeting special education minutes in the remote setting.
I'll refer to you, Deb.
It actually was in story somewhere.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
I
it
saw
is from last time.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, I missed it when I was scanning through. My apologies.
Not a problem. All right, we are
What was
at, sorry,
Deborah,
Jim, go
what
ahead.
was the last word? The last word of your option. Area of
identification.
All right, Heather Espinoza.
Pass.
Bo.
Pass.
Chris.
Pass.
Heather Gracious.
Pass.
Marty.
Pass.
Kathy.
Pass.
Dave Lockley.
Sorry, pass. Sounds like we're having a lot of passes. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm going through the list the second time, and then if everybody's passing, then I'm going to ask for others. So Laura Leppi.
Count special students of special populations as a weighted number, like a 1.2 or whatever for them, and then cap the number of caseload threshold things. Oh, that wasn't technical, sorry. At a number of 30 by however many classes said teacher teaches. So like if they taught, for clarification, so if they taught 5 sections or 5 classes, it'd be 30 by 5. Or if they taught 4 sections, it'd be 30 by 4. So like 120, 150, etc. for caseload threshold.
Okay.
And if you could check and just make sure that got written because I can't see it, that'd be amazing. Thank you.
Jim is working on it. Laura, you may have to say it again,
Okay.
but he's working on it right now.
Okay, just let me know if you need me to repeat things. Allison's still my other one. Allison's doing very well this evening.
Now that you can hear.
Exactly.
So what I wrote was count students of special population as weighted counts when computing class sizes and load.
that work, Laura?
Yes, and then the specification of the 30 by however many the teacher classes the teacher teaches as that threshold.
Okay. Nancy.
Pass.
Laura Mitchell.
I get we seem to have a lot of places where we talk about caseload, but we don't really have a definition or agreed upon definition of what that means. So in order to use it in the option, do you not have to define some kind, how you're going to break that up or how you're going to weight online versus remote, how many students, how many special IEPs, and
Can somebody answer Laura's question? That I believe that was a question, right, Laura?
So our operational definition currently of caseload is the total number of students that a educator works with. That's the, and then you sometimes use the phrase caseload needs to describe some of the other things you're talking about. So what are the needs of the caseload versus the actual caseload itself?
Does that help you, Laura?
well, in a normal circumstance, I would say yes, but I think part of what I was getting at is the hybrid teachers are teaching, they're going to have hybrid kids and synchronous kids. And still, I think they're less, and I don't know, I'm not a teacher, but to me, there's challenges, I guess I would say, in how you're going to produce your lesson plan for that class versus a class where you've got a homogeneous remote class. And I don't know. I mean, the teachers would have to say, but to me, it might be more complicated than just what your normal calculation is. Something to think about.
Okay. Sandy, you got your hand up.
And Laura, I'm just trying to, are you thinking like, should we define like a number or a ratio, or is that what you're thinking?
Or a weighting factor. I don't know if it's a weighting factor or, because then I think there's some teachers that have hybrid, they plan for a hybrid course and they have to plan for a remote course. And some teachers plan all remote. And I don't know, those are things to me that where I thought that I was understanding that it was complicated in the fall, especially, and then we added asynchronous kids onto it. So I don't, that's something that the teachers need to weigh in on. Those are just things that were rolling around in my head and I don't know how to word them or weight them or how you might do that.
I guess I was coming from the outlook of, or perspective of equity among the remote and hybrid. But I mean, I know that can all be worked out in small group, but I don't know. That's kind of what I was thinking along those lines.
I think the other issue that we talked about is the reason why this was an issue that we're discussing is the fact that they are both, everyone's remote right now and the students are different, right? Like if they were still two different jobs, then we live in the world of trade-offs and this is different and this is harder and this is easier. And you're right, very hard to quantify. The reason why this is an issue is because everybody's remote right now. It wouldn't have come up otherwise. I mean, it would come up, but it wouldn't be here with us now if we were all back to doing different jobs again.
Okay, so Laura, go ahead.
Well, I thought I heard it was an issue even when we were in hybrid, but
It's definitely an issue. It's just it's an issue we can't solve. Like no one has an answer for it now. The reason why you're grappling with it is that nobody knows the answer. It's just not the specific aspect of it that is brought us to this conversation today. We're dealing with just one sliver of that much larger pie that you're identifying.
Dorman, your hand is up, sir.
I think what caseload is a simpler idea that we're dealing with than workload. So if you begin to start adding in a lot of those other different pieces, that's a much bigger and more complex problem. So I think caseload is something more manageable at this point. I think that's why a lot of people may be talking about caseload.
Okay. All right. So if you have we've gone through the list twice now. So if you have another option, please put your hand up and I'll get to you. And I'll give you a few seconds to think. All right, seeing none, are we ready to go to straw design? Mila, Dave, is that where we're headed next? And remember that you can add options in straw design as well. Mila?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Roddy if you're still out there, or Jody, to explain to us, because our breaking into the breakout rooms is going to involve us leaving this meeting. Dave and Jim, you stay here, and you're welcome to log into the other meetings, but so eventually, team, we'll log back on to this meeting, just like you did when you first joined this afternoon. But right now, Roddy, would you explain to us what we need to do to go to the other meetings?
Absolutely. So there is a Zoom straw design group that I believe is inside your guys' shared drive. Next to each of the straw design groups is a tiny URL link. You will click on that and it'll take you to the webinar that Heather, Dave, and Mila has set up. This should pull you completely out of this meeting and put you into the webinar where you guys will be panelists and do your straw design group piece. Anyone that's out in the public, these links are in the YouTube description. And so they can join in as attendees and be able to watch you guys do the work, similar to how they would walk around and look over your shoulders if we were still in person. Once the straw design groups are done, you will click back into the Zoom link, like in the calendar invite, to get back into here, and we will continue on from there.
Roddy, do our members need to use the passwords?
No, so the passcode is already part of the tiny URL link. If they were added as alternative hosts, they will be automatically pulled in as a panelist. If that was not done, the host, in your case, Mila, you'll have to pick each person out of the attendees to be made into a panelist.
Okay.
Okay,
and is yours the last one? Because I see one for Dave, and I see one from Heather. And then there's another one, but no name. Is that you?
Wait, where are you guys seeing these things?
So don't worry about the chat. In the shared drive is a document titled Straw Design Groups inside of this year's folder. And Nancy probably is going to have issues getting that one. So what I can do is just put hers in the chat there. Or it looks like Dorman put the whole document in the chat.
So a question from me, are these timed, and how much time are you using? Just so Jim and I aren't wandering off somewhere and you guys are all popping back in.
You tell us what time you want us to come back, and we'll all leave those meetings to come back to the main room at whatever time you tell us to.
Okay, so I'm going to throw it back to you, Dave. How much time do you need?
I mean, Mila, do you want to do like 20 minutes to start with and do for a check-in and report with folks? Do we want to do 25, or do we want a little bit longer time in that space.
I think 20 minutes sounds like a good start.
Yeah.
It's
Let's at least
yeah.
do a progress check in 20 minutes.
Sounds
How about this? How about this? Heather, Dave, and I will text Jim rather than having people come out of the meeting and into the meeting. Let us text you at 20 and we'll text each other and you, and we will let you know if it's looking good, or we'll check in with each other at that point.
Great.
How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Before we
All right.
leave, has everyone found their link?
Linda?
Is it the webinar? It says, please click the link below to join the webinar. Is that what I
Yep.
click? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
All right. We'll see you all in 20 minutes then. Maybe.
Okay.
Hello, it told me that I needed a meeting password when I entered. Anybody there?
One moment, please.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Roddy.
Yes, Heather.
Mine asked for a password and now it's asking me for the host to let me in.
Yeah, it's asking me for a passcode.
One moment, please, ladies. Let me see what I can find out.
They're saying the passcode works. Thank you. I'll give it a try.
Mr. Gadowski, if you can try using the link again, I will message you in this chat here the passcode to get in.
All right.
Oh, did you find your way?
What? Did you think I got lost?
No, Bo, he and I were like in the same group and we were lost together.
Got it. I just came back and you're like, did you find your way? I was like, I thought you were talking to me. I don't understand. I'm here.
At first, I thought I was in the room of honor because I was in there with Dave and Jim, and I thought, hot damn, I've got a promotion. And then all of a sudden I realized, no, this is the Island of Misfit Toys.
That's right.
You also thought it was the AARP meeting.
True, I did say that.
Heather, I'd like to point out that our group, Mila said 7:30, and our two groups are here. I'm just going to say that out loud, and just saying.
Well, and our group did our work in a fraction of the time because we spent most of our time in La La Land just
trying to get back into the room. All right, looks like people are filtering back in.
Oh, Allison, look at that fancy backdrop. I liked the flamingos, but this one is cool too.
All right, are we all back? Does it look like everybody's back?
I think we are.
Yeah, nobody floating in cyberspace right now. So,
I don't think
all right.
so.
So let's start with straw design group number 1. Would you explain what you did, and then we'll take questions, and then we'll go from there. So, group 1, who's your spokesperson?
I can do it. Considering I totally screwed up the whole getting to the group to begin with. So we did discuss having a group that looked at some patterns and trends of what's working well this year so far and second semester, so that we can determine how to best make decisions whenever and if we do have a remote school. Cool idea to train classified staff to run tech if you have larger remote classes, who could run the Zoom or Go Guardian. Basically, we want a ROTI for classroom teachers. But using the process now that's already in place, and having teams, down to our last bullet, work with leadership to identify some inequities and have conversations about why decisions were made or make adjustments. And then in the future, looking at elementary remote caseload sizes to be the same as in person, especially for K2.
Okay. Questions from, or anything else from group 1 that Heather missed that on it? I think she did a pretty good job, but I have to ask. All right, questions for group 1 from group 2 and group 3. Laura.
What did you say about using something?
That was
oh my God.
That was so I was saying, like, when I have, because I do teach really large class sizes, so like my CP core is 60 something, I can't even remember how many, and there's just like a lot going on, and then when I'm screen sharing, the chat goes away, and so it's just like being able to manage all of what's going on over here with like student needs and questions. So I was saying, if somebody had really large class sizes, the idea of giving them a parent, like for me, that wouldn't be helpful. I don't need somebody to like support student learning. I need someone to run the tech so I can just teach and like tell me when there's a chat coming in or something, because then I don't see it sometimes for like 5 minutes because of those really large class sizes. So I don't need it in my sociology class where the class size is very manageable. And the tech isn't hard. It's just like when I'm trying to teach and there's other things going on. So it was just an out there idea that I thought maybe we could do.
Did that answer your question, Laura?
I think so. I just wanted to double check.
Okay.
Allison's going to talk for me all night anyway, so it's totally fine about those.
Sounds good. Any other questions from group 2 and group 3? Nancy.
I know that I heard in the news that K and first grade this year were particularly small. And I wonder, with your suggestion about having them be the same as in-person sizes, if that would continue in the future, where you'd have a lot fewer parents sending their kids to kindergarten and first grade, would this end up having to hire lots more teachers at K1? And that might be a problem. I don't know.
Can somebody answer Nancy's question?
Only when I get my crystal ball back.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a corollary, or that smaller class sizes equals more teachers. So anytime you shrink class size, you're going to have to hire more teachers.
Right, and I understand that. My concern, and I guess I was just wondering, if you only had 5 kids, if you would then try to equal every remote class to 5 kids.
That's a great point, Nancy. I think maybe some of the ambiguity, even as somebody who is largely an observer as opposed to a contributor to group 1. So thanks to the gang for carrying the weight. I think part of what we seem to be more focused on were these thresholds of like 29 being the upper reach of how big class size could be, grades 3, 4, and 5. They're lower 20s to mid 20s for K1, 2. And my sense was we just wanted remote sections not to be larger than those thresholds of like 22 to 29, as opposed to whatever our in-person is. If it's like 15 kids, I didn't hear in our conversation that if we had an actual of 15 at kindergarten, because enrollment was really low at a particular school, that would prompt a 15 student class size in remote. That's my sense, but I think it's a good point of clarification, and I would invite others from the team just to weigh in if I've misunderstood or misrepresented.
No, I would agree. I think we were talking about those upper limits, not exceeding those upper limits in the remote setting.
Okay, other questions for group 1? All right then, group 2, who's your spokesperson?
Guess that's me this time. I'll make someone else do it next time we have a group time. So ours is similar. We just kind of boiled it down to more streamlined 3 points. So, we talked about transitioning to caseload numbers to determine any imbalances instead of talking about class sizes. We talked about encouraging staff to use standard processes for working through imbalances. I described that, doing it 12, 15 times a year over the past 5 years, I've seen lots of different menus of options. And so we didn't want to spell out all the different ways that those imbalances could be adjusted, but to just use the process. I know I did put it in the drive, but it's also the link to the actual form that we use to help staff and whatnot go through that process. And then our last bullet, we talked about not wanting to do anything too quickly or too rashly today to stem the potential revolution or potential really great ideas or changes that are coming with remote learning or this new environment that we're in. And so similar to the other group, but we just said, continue to work to determine what remote learning will look in the future. So not giving it exact task, but just saying, let's continue talking about it without describing in detail what that work looks like now.
All right, questions for group 2 from 1 or 3, or anything else from group 2 that Dave missed? Give you a few seconds to think about what Dave said, and then we're going to move to group 3. All right, group 3, who's your spokesperson?
Well, I guess I'll start, and like Dave said, we'll pick somebody else next time. We have 3 bullets listed here, but I would not say that we had consensus about those bullets. These kind of frame some of the ideas we were toying with, but we just didn't really have a chance to bring it all the way home. We did talk about the fact that we think the simultaneous instruction model might result in some creative ways to resolve or balance some of these issues. Laura was talking about maybe a student she had at the beginning of the year that she lost, kind of mid-year, but might come back to her, because with simultaneous instruction, maybe that could happen. And we revisited the notion that we don't want to play 52 card pickup. So just talking through some of those ideas. We talked about the current system to resolve, and we talked a bit, Sandy's in our group, and so we talked a bit about the particulars of the imbalances that she's been sharing with the group as part of story, and the fact, and I think it came up with a couple members that, you know, well, if we've got these existing mechanisms, how come we have such inequities just still going on, I think is a fair way to put it. Why haven't they been addressed yet? And so that's, I drafted the third bullet to try to address this idea that let's have a common understanding that every effort should be made to address imbalances as we enter into second semester. We talked about the idea that principals had an awful lot on their plates, and that maybe addressing imbalances perhaps wasn't the first thing that they worked on. So, Bo, do you have a question?
Yeah, Bo, question?
Not a question, just a comment on that point. I just want to delineate that sometimes it's not always about effort or will. There were some real and legitimate obstacles to that problem solving when we considered available staffing, staff that either had an accommodation to be at home, could only work from home, and then the choice that families made whether their students wanted to be in person or remote. And then at the secondary level, when you think about every effort being made to preserve students' master schedule choices, all that calculus made it very difficult prior to simultaneous instruction to making all of that fit together. So I don't want anyone in the system to think at any place where we haven't solved these the way we need to think it's a lack of will or intent. In many cases this year, there's been some really legitimate obstacles that have made that difficult. I just think that's an important part of the story here, as well as we contemplate why isn't this happening.
All right, Mila, did you have more to say?
That's really helpful, and it does sort of mirror, we didn't have some of those particular details posed, so that's super helpful. We talked about the idea that often it's a matter of resources. Nobody wants things to continue to be inequitable, but there's often a resource issue, which kind of describes what you're talking about. And in that case, it should elevate to like a Dave level, because he and I and others can be problem solvers to the extent that it's possible. And we can sometimes bring other ideas to bear or other resources to the scene. So anyway, that a group, is there anything I missed or that you'd want to add?
Allison.
I think I really like that last bullet, but I think that so I did reach out to some people at some schools where they had super high caseloads. And it was sort of like this weird space of it's this year and like, this is not a forever situation. And so like they kind of did the mental trade-offs on their own. And some people's mental trade-offs were different than other people's mental trade-offs. So I think we still need to define it a little bit more, but I really like this.
Okay. Any other input on any of the three straw designs? All right, help Jim and I guide us where you want to go next with the three straw designs. Mila?
Dave, I wonder if I don't know if we see enough similarity, if we have some comfort in maybe sending a rep or two from each group to do like a little work group in the next few weeks before our next meeting, and to come back with some kind of an attempted merger. How does that feel to people?
I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up on that, Mila. So Sandy.
I mean, I hate to be the wrench in the whole idea, but I just wonder if anybody else feels like we needed more time in our groups.
Deb's got her hand up.
I have to say, I kind of did. I feel like a work group over the holidays and moving in is still going to leave a teacher maybe feeling stranded still for a few other weeks. And I think we all need, I don't know, I think we all kind of need a breather over the next 2 weeks. And so
I
that-
wouldn't think over break, Deb. I would think
I
our work
know.
group would meet in early January. Mhm.
Right, but my concern is then some of these teachers I feel are still going to feel stranded.
Dave.
So I would just point out, because I agree with what you're saying, Deb. I would just point out that there is nothing stopping a principal or a teacher from saying, I need help, or I would like adjustments in my, whether it's looking at case sizes now, asking for additional support. Like, there is nothing stopping teachers today from walking through our enforceable contract language right now. There's nothing stopping us. There's nothing stopping, Kristen from working with her teachers to alleviate any issues. We do have some work that we need to continue to do, especially if we're going to formally redefine stuff as caseload versus class size, that kind of stuff in a formal space. But there's nothing unenforceable about our language right now to help people today. And I thought it would, it's been an odd thing. I think Allison kind of pointed it out in a good way. It's like some people have accepted it. People are in all different places. It's been really hard. And I would encourage any educator who to raise their hand today, tomorrow. And if they are having issues with their principal or they don't feel supported, that's why we have the processes that we do. I almost feel like, and this is just an opinion, I almost feel like by putting this on the agenda, we hit the pause button on a lot of people's minds and operations that would have normally otherwise been going on over the last couple of weeks. And that's not intentional and it's not a big deal. I mean, it just is what it is. But there's nothing that would stop the work of making educators' lives better, because that makes them more effective for students today.
Okay, other input.
I was just going to say that I feel like I would hate to see us, I know we only have one more day before everybody goes out, and then you've got 3 work days before kids come back. But I would think that if you're going to move kids and rebalance, the sooner you could do that before they start their second semester would be better. So, and I don't know how to do that process, but while you're working on the formal words, if you can use the process, the language that's already there to fix some of the biggest glaring problems.
Other input.
Could we have maybe it's 10 till 8. Could we have maybe 10-ish more minutes or something like that in our groups to kind of finalize and sum up what we were talking about? And then if people were to go, a smaller group were to go work on this and put it all together, we'd have the final thoughts all wrapped up.
What do you think, group? Go back into straw design for 10 minutes is what you're asking, Sandy, correct? Yeah. Mila?
I'm not sure how close that we were within 10 minutes of agreement. I'm not sure that we were, but I'm not sure that we weren't either. I would also
do that.
Go ahead.
I guess I just feel rushed. I feel like we're hurrying to, I don't know.
Jim, what were you going to say, sir?
Well, before you do that, it's true you only have a few more minutes left, but you have a couple of other items on the agenda. What's most important to have done before you leave here tonight?
So outside of wrapping up or getting everyone in a good space in this particular topic, Mila and I need some permissions to launch some work in January, which was one of our items left, talking about Article 21 and the IHB work. We need permission to start some of that work. That won't take terribly long to review, and as long as there's no disagreements or concerns about the work that we want to do, that shouldn't take very long. But we do need the blessing of this group in order to continue that work moving forward. Because I would really want to do that starting in January before our next session. Not that we're going to necessarily present it at that session, but I think we need that time to be doing that work.
I also feel like at least understanding the timeline for the 5-star online school, just where we stand with that consideration might just be a 2-minute update that's important to have.
All right, so Sandy did make the request to go back into straw design for a few more minutes. Do you want to do that? You got to guide Jim and I as to where you want to go here.
Were the other?
Are we supposed to be done at 8:30?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I was thinking it was 8.
Oh, 8:30.
I would think it
was 8 in my head.
No wonder you're like, we don't have time.
Sorry. Sorry.
You have 7 minutes to solve all of this. Get on it, would you?
That was totally Freudian.
All right. So what's the pleasure of the group? You want to go back for a few minutes to see if you can finish things up, or what do you want to do, Dave?
If group 3, I think it is, if I got my numbers right, needs some more time, more than glad to give it to them. I believe my group, because we had finished our work for a while, I believe we had a bit of time before, unless my group disagrees. I don't know that we would necessarily go into Strata or back into our group, Matt or Bo or anything. I think we're and everyone, I think we were in a good spot, right, Dorman? So our group would probably just hang out here. Like I said, more than glad to give group 3 a moment or two if that's what needs to be, so they're in a good spot moving forward.
How about group 2? Where are you at?
I felt like we were in a good place. Sorry, Heather. I don't think we need more time, but if anybody else wants to chime in, I think we were in a good place as well.
All right, so let's do this. Let's give group 3 10 more minutes to go back in and see if they can finish up a few things, their conversation at least. And then when group 3 comes back, we'll finish the other 2 items and wrap things up for the night. Does that sound good? Dave, you have your hand up again?
Nope, I was stretching. My bad.
Okay, sorry. You're not allowed to stretch, Dave. What's the matter?
Sorry, I forgot we run auctioneer's rules around here.
Okay, so Roddy, put the group on a break. Hey team, we'll go log into our other group and we'll all see you there.
Okay. All right, are we all back together now?
We're back.
All right. So, Mila, do you want to give us a report, please?
Yeah, we had a chance to just be sure that we were all on the same page. We did add a fourth bullet on, if you're on the sheet, you'll see it. It talks about continuing the work during second semester to do the work of defining reasonable remote thresholds. We just acknowledge that we don't know what those are yet. There's a lot of moving parts, and we don't want to set any precedent particularly right now. We think there's work to be done. So I think we're ready to send a couple of reps to a writing group that meets early in the new year to merge these three options.
Okay, that sounds good. And how did you want to put that together, Mila? Do you want to take volunteers or just assign them, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, I think it should be one or two people from each
Straw design group.
each group, one admin, one teacher, and then
all right,
I'll an invitation.
Okay, let's do this. So group one, a teacher and an admin from group one that would serve on this small group. I'll take volunteers.
I can do it unless you want to do it, Heather.
With me, as long as there's an elementary person on one of the groups on it, I'm fine.
Okay, so you're on, Allison, and an administrator from group one.
That will be Heather Gracious.
Heather Gracious. All right.
I was just going to nominate her as well.
Oh, God.
You
I've
got
had enough drama tonight.
I think you just got voluntold, Heather.
That's how it
All
works.
right. Yeah, group two, an administrator. Who's the administrator from group two? Matt's going to do that, and member from group two. Dorman.
Well, Dave can do it. I didn't realize I thought he had enough to do. So, but go ahead, Dave, if you want to.
Okay, so it's Dave and Matt. Yep, thank you. Group three.
I guess it's probably me or Kristen. It could be Kristen.
Kristen and Sandy.
I'll do it. Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
Give my spot to Heather Espinoza then, because then there's no elementary person. Is that right?
Kristen is elementary, but she's not an association elementary. Does it work that Kristen can whatever?
Heather, does that work for you? Okay.
Heather just gave the thumbs up. So there you are. It's Heather. It's the two Heathers, Matt, Dave, Kristen, and Sandy on it. All right.
I'll facilitate your invitation. Okay. Dave, do you want to go fast into the charge for 21?
Yep, totally can. It won't take very long. You mentioned yesterday, and it's not yesterday, last time, and we have a document in your folder for this group that we are asking. We asked to continue the work of the comp committee, specifically targeting Article 21. And what we would like to do, as listed in the document there, I see you guys bubbling in, so I'll just kind of keep going, is like we would like to take the existing comp committee, add a couple of friends from who do specific work with the intermediate hours board, and work on the tasks below. Identify the process for submitting IHB documents in a more streamlined manner. Identify areas needing updating, i.e. I mentioned last time, there's just been a lot of change in delivery of professional development. Specifically, the example I highlighted here was, CDE is now providing a lot more of this training, but we don't have a way of translating that into salary schedule language. So I'm potentially updating some of that. And then considering and looking at last year's changes to the CTE process and their possible applications in the IHB realm. So are there things that we should or should not do to mirror? Just look at that as a port into the larger contract space. So that is, the larger charge that we want to do with this specific group by taking our existing comp committee group, adding a few IHB members, and doing this work for a report later in the spring.
Okay, any questions for Dave around this? And Dave, that's all you need to do on this item, is that right?
Yeah, as long as everybody's in agreement that these committee members and this task work can go forward, then we are good to go. That's all I needed.
Okay, let me see your thumbs on that, on what he just said. You're good to go, Dave. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Mila?
Bo, can I ask Bo to just, are you prepared to give 2 words about, okay, 10 or 15 words, 2 minutes about online school? It was on our agenda and it's not long, I don't think.
Sure. The 2 words would be stay tuned. The slightly longer version would be, if you can remember a time before COVID, it's getting harder by the day. We were very interested over the last year and a half plus of getting an online school up and available within Adams 12. It is an important option for a public school district of our size to offer to families for a variety of reasons. We have kids who are superstar athletes that are involved in training regimens that make a typical school schedule hard for them. We have families with different health reasons that make a typical schedule difficult. We have families with employment situations that make that difficult. So adding that as an option is really important to kids. And we have every intention of doing it. But right now we find ourselves thinking about when you contemplate a long-term perpetual online plan, you want to do that at a time where you're dealing with realistic interest and realistic numbers and realistic opportunities. And right now, because of real legitimate concerns around the coronavirus, we don't have that certainty around long-term interest. And so as we contemplate staffing that and getting that rolling, we really have to be careful that we don't create a long-term problem for us as a system with staffing and financial commitments when long-term interest changes on the backside of the pandemic. So we still have some work to do on what exactly the right next step's going to be as we think about a short-term need with a combined with a long-term vision. And we need to do some more engagement with families, with staff, with this team to figure out what that means in the short term and the long term. So stay tuned. We'll have more updates around what those next steps are, but just important to know there's a long-term vision and the short-term reality that we have to kind of keep our eye on simultaneously.
All right, Bo, you were 107 words over your 10-word limit, so I'll take it off the next time, okay? All right.
Well said, Bo, thank you.
Yep. All right, so anything else before we check out, folks? All right, 2-word checkout, and we're going to start with Laura Mitchell. Thought for the day, 2-word checkout.
Happy holiday.
Nancy.
I was going to say the same thing. Happy holidays, whatever.
Laura Leppy. That sounded like 2 words.
How is Lara ever at a loss for words?
Yeah.
Well, because I feel pressure to say happy holidays, but I was going to say like awesome progress or amazing and intelligent and now I've gone over my words and I miss you already and happy 2021. Boom.
Dave Lockley.
Mine was Sayonara 2020.
Kathy.
Nice work and yes, welcome 2021.
Marty. Marty gone? Hungry? Oh, there he is, still hungry, he says. Heather, gracious.
Thankful for Roddy.
Chris.
Good night.
Ben, or Bo, excuse me, Bo.
I'd rather be Ben. Can I be Ben?
Sorry. I can't read my own writing, Bo. Sorry. Bo.
And if I could choose, I'm going to choose Aflac. Thank you.
Heather F. Spinoza.
Enjoy.
Deborah.
And to all a good night. Thank you all so much.
Teresa.
Vacation time.
Allison.
I'm with Teresa. Vacation time.
Mila.
Relax and enjoy.
Matt.
Happy break.
Sandy.
So grateful for this group. Namaste.
Linda.
Great conversations.
Kristen.
Take care.
Dorman.
Vacaciones.
Jim.
Two things, though. I'm sorry, I'm going to take more words. Thank you very much, and I apologize to whoever I offended because somebody has blocked my video. It says a facilitator has blocked my video. So
it was.
Oh, my host has started finally. And I'll sleep better tonight. I was sure I had offended somebody. Thank you very much for the work you do. I hope you get to recreate yourselves over the next couple of weeks.
Enjoy the holiday, folks. Great job. We'll see you in the new year.